fashion brand that they made up. The two become unlikely friends because one is super annoying, and this is the worst review ever. There's little breadcrumbs and things that you're like, wait, things are not great at all. Things are crazy! Should you read a book versus listen to it? I think it's a young adult book, but listen, it was great. Subtly disturbing and creepy. It's shocking, it's terrifying, it's disturbing, up until the very last sentence. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Katie, and today, I'm going to talk about my reading month in my year of simple. So I dedicated the month of October in my year of simple to trying to read more and get back into reading. Now, pre-having children, I used to love reading a lot, and I used to find pockets of time within my day to read. After having kids, I realized that I really didn't read a lot. So for this month, I got into it full. Like, this month was a win, hands down. I am back into reading. I'll just tell you that right now. Back into loving books. Newfound love for audiobooks, which I'll go into in a little bit. I'm gonna go through sort of a book review of some books that I've read in the past, some audiobooks that I've read this month, because believe it or not, I got through 4 or 5 audiobooks within 1 month. At the beginning of summer, a girlfriend of mine had asked me if I wanted to join a book club. She was going to start a brand new book club. I've never been in a book club. I've been in a podcast club where we discuss podcasts. I can't really commit to a book. I never thought I loved reading, and if I read, I wanted to read what I wanted to read, not what everyone else wanted to read, and so I just didn't think that book clubs were for me. I was like, I should join this book club in anticipation for October. I might as well. So I think we've read 5 different books so far, so maybe it's been 5 months now. So what I learned within my book club is that I really kind of thought that if you joined a book club, you had to read every single book. The first meeting I showed up to, I didn't even know the title of the book. So the second book we chose was Trevor Noah's Born a Crime. And so since that was a memoir, I was like, oh, I'm going to listen to this through an audiobook. So I bought the audiobook and I really loved it. To hear him tell his story of his life being born in Africa and being a mixed race, which at the time under the apartheid was very not common, and he basically had to live in secret. And it was just really interesting. I needed to hear him tell me that story. I don't think I would have been as interested just reading it myself. And so that's a perfect example of a book that I really loved and got into with listening to it. The third book that we read in my book club was The Lake House. I maybe got into 140 pages of it. Her writing was so descriptive. She was giving details of every little thing. I just don't need that much detail, and this is a really long book, and so I couldn't get into it. I felt good that I didn't waste my time. As someone had pointed out to me, life is too short to read a bad book that you're not interested in. Not that this was a bad book, it just wasn't my interest. The fourth book that we read was The Handmaid's Tale. That was the first fiction book that I listened to. I got very mixed reviews when I talked about reading The Handmaid's Tale on Instagram. Some people were like, you're gonna love it, you're gonna hate it, it's not interesting, it's shocking, it's terrifying, it's disturbing. Someone had pointed out that it was narrated by Claire Danes. I will say I did not like the book, even though I listened to it and her voice was great. Her voice was great, but it's also just the feeling of the book is very sort of monotone, and it's things are not great, things are still not great, things are awful, things are still awful. So I just didn't like it. And funny enough, I didn't find it to be that disturbing. I mean, it was fiction, and so a lot of people are like, it's so scary, this could actually happen. And I'm like, this is not actually gonna happen. I don't know, I just didn't like it. It just wasn't for me, I didn't like it. But it was a great gateway into me listening to fiction on audio. So I'm glad that I did that, because as my October proper, I'm gonna try to read a lot in October started, I actually realized that I didn't read a proper book in October, but I listened to 4 fiction books, which was great. So the month of October, my book club was like, this is your month. We're going to let you pick your book for, your year of simple. And so after a lot of suggestions from people on Instagram, and particularly Ashley Spivey, who I've mentioned her before, but she's a great Instagram follow. She's an avid reader. She talks about books all the time and has a book club actually on Facebook. And I actually reviewed this in a video a couple weeks ago that I had read The Kind Worth Killing. and she was like, if you want a real good murdery book, I think you would really love this one. And boy, was she right. She hit it out of the park. And I actually don't even have it to show you because I lent it to a friend. I'll give you a short little non-spoiler synopsis of each thing, but the premise of the book is that there's a man and a woman who meet in a London airport. They realize they're on the same flight, their flight's been delayed, and then they sit next to each other on the flight. And basically, the man confides in her that his wife has been cheating on him, and he jokes about wanting to kill her, and she's like, I think you should. And they just sort of get into like making a plan of what they can do, and is he really going to kill her? And you learn a lot about this woman and her background and why she sort of thinks that killing people isn't the worst thing ever. It's really interesting, and it's really interesting because the main character, this woman, is like an awful human being. Like, she has an awful background, she does awful things, but you almost sort of enjoy her. And it's interesting, and I love when someone can write a character who you hate but you love. There's another one in this stack, if you can guess, that's along that line too. That's really interesting. But the reason that I loved the book is because it's very fast paced. There's lots of twists and turns. There's 3 parts to the book. It almost feels like 3 books in one. I loved it up until the very last sentence. You're like, oh, what? And also, I'll tell you that I listened to it again in audio form, and this sort of leads me into my audiobook section of this video, which I know I'm sort of all over the place with this video. So I got into listening to audiobooks. The very end of the month, I decided, you know what? I want to understand, how do you decide if you're going to read something or listen to something? And how do you, like, is it a different experience? Should you read a book versus listen to it? Are you retaining it differently? And I read a couple different articles, which I'll list below. All the research that I read really sort of confirms that it doesn't matter if you read it or listen to it. It's like you ran a race. Does it matter how you finished? You finished. Everyone made it to the end of the race. Everyone read the book. I love it for obvious reasons. You can multitask if you're in the car, if you're cleaning or folding laundry. I got through a ton of things this month while listening to audiobooks and brought so much enjoyment into just normal tasks that I was doing. But towards the end of the month, I was like, you know what? I wonder if the experience of listening versus reading is different. And so, you know what? I loved The Kind Worth Killing so much, and I had read it in the beginning of September. My book club is reviewing it in the end of October. I listened to it to try to see, like, did I picture things differently? I enjoyed it just the same, and I enjoyed it the second time around too. And that book is actually narrated by different voices for each of the characters, because a couple of the voices were a little different than I would have thought them to be, and that sort of threw me off a little bit. And so I guess that can maybe change your perception of what the person looks like, or even just the way that someone like delivers a line is maybe different than you read it in your mind. All that to say that I really did enjoy listening to the book as much as I enjoyed reading it. And The Kind Worth Killing gets rave reviews from me. I think you should either listen to it or read it, whatever your preference is. Both were very enjoyable. Now, before I go into the other 3 books that I listened to this month, I'm going to show you on my phone some of the apps that I've been using to listen to the books. Currently have 5 different apps on my phone that I can listen to books through. However, only 2 of those 5 apps are supported by my local library, where I have a library card, and that's sort of the catch, is that you have to put your library card number in. But a lot of you had pointed out, and I might do this in the future, that you can go to a neighboring city and get a library card from the neighboring city and use that as well, which is helpful because the 2 that I have access to that I've been using, sometimes there's a book available, sometimes there's not, sometimes there's a long wait on this one, or this one doesn't offer that book. So it's sort of great to have different libraries to choose from within the apps, which has been very helpful. And so I personally have been using Hoopla and Cloud Library, but the other apps that people suggested that I personally haven't used because it's not supported with my library card is Libby, Overdrive, and RB Digital. And I'm sure that there might be more, but that's 5 great ones to get started with. The other app that I think a lot of people know about and I had heard about but had never used is Goodreads. And that is to get book recommendations and reviews from people. You can fill out a profile and put in all the books that you want to read or the books that you have read. You can make a list and check things off. It will suggest other books based on the genres that you like, based on the style of books. Like if you liked A Kind Worth Killing, you would like this. And it seems like a lot of people people are also making like, 2019, I want to read 60 books. Here's my list of books that I want to read. And you sort of check through them. So great resources all around there. Okay, so back to some of the audiobooks that I've listened to this month. So I listened to Behind Closed Doors. I really liked it. I actually thought that it was more like disturbing to me than The Handmaid's Tale, because it's sort of like a psychological thriller with a husband and a wife, and things seem perfect, and then there's little breadcrumbs and things that you're like, wait, things are not great at all, things are crazy. And it was just more realistic to me. Things were so subtly disturbing and creepy that you could almost like, I mean, for some people it might be far-fetched, but I feel like it's like it was subtle enough but disturbing enough. And oh, that was a really good one. I wondered constantly what was going to happen next, and that was a really great read or listen. The second book that I listened to was Then She Was Gone, and I sort of have mixed feelings on this book because it was interesting enough to hold my attention, and I was wondering what was going to happen the entire time. And basically the synopsis of the book is that, so there's this family and they have 2 daughters, and the youngest one, I forget how old she was, maybe like 13 or 14 or something, she goes missing, and she's sort of like the light of their life and the apple of their eye and just this perfect girl, and she goes missing, and it's sort of like what happened to her, and the fact that she went missing sort of tears their family apart and tears their relationships apart, and the husband and wife get divorced, and then she starts dating someone new, and then you're like, wait, who is this guy? Why is she dating this guy? What happened? I felt like overall it was too drawn out, and the actual like plot and what ends up actually happening, which I can't tell you, was super unrealistic to me. And I mean, I'm all for listening to like a mystery that's like super unrealistic, but I just sort of felt like, why would someone do that? I don't understand what the reasoning was, because it just didn't make sense to me. Once I expressed on Instagram that I read it and didn't really like it, a lot of other people were like, yeah, I wasn't so sure either. That wasn't the greatest book. So maybe, I mean, I don't know. The other one that I listened to simply because it was available, it's not one that it's been like on my list to read, but was A Simple Favor. So that one caught my eye just because it's in the theaters right now, and the movie trailer looked interesting, basically because there's not a lot explained in the movie trailer. So you're sort of like, what is this even about? And I understand now because I listened to the book, and I understand that there's not a lot you can say because it would give a lot away. But I listened to it and I didn't love it. I'm curious to see it. I'll see it when it comes out on Netflix, just because I think with Blake Lively in it, I think there'll be some fun fashiony moments. I basically hated both characters, which I guess is good writing, and I guess is good reading, like the 2 people who narrated the book. It's basically about like a mommy blogger who's super annoying, and she's like, hi moms, and you just want to hate her. She just sounds so obnoxious. And then there's this kind of quiet, aloof girl who works for a fashion brand that they made up. The 2 become unlikely friends because one is super annoying, and this is the worst review ever. The aloof fashion friend goes missing, and then the annoying mommy blogger makes all the worst decisions ever. Things happen in the end, and you're like, who cares? So, I don't know. But a lot of people told me that the movie is a little bit different, that they made things a little bit more dramatic, and that they changed the ending to make it more Hollywood. So, I'm interested to see how the actual movie turns out, but I would not listen to the book or read it. It was sort of like, who cares? Y'all are annoying and make bad decisions. So I was going to go through just a quick synopsis of some of the books that I have read in the past that I really like. When Breath Becomes Air. This is a true story, and I actually reviewed this like on last year in a video. He is a neurosurgeon who is diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. And at the time, that felt really similar to, my dad wasn't a neurosurgeon, but he was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer and passed rather quickly. And so this is, I guess, for me, I feel like after my dad passed, I almost just wanted to, it makes me cry just thinking about it, this book and my own experience, but I think I just wanted to become closer to like someone who was in the face of death, and that's what this guy talks about. And this book is basically 2 parts. It's basically the beginning of his life and why he chose to become a neurosurgeon. The second half of the book is him getting diagnosed with cancer, and eventually, like, it's not like it's a spoiler, but he basically does pass from cancer, and his wife finishes the book for him that he started. And it's very emotional. It's just a beautiful book that I think everybody should read. Totally different than everything else that I've read, but I really loved that book a lot, and I read it like in a couple of days. Along the same lines, I've talked about this one before too, Option B, written by Sheryl Sandberg, who works at Facebook. She lost her husband to, I think it was a brain hemorrhage or something while they were on vacation. But it's such a great read because she talks a lot about how, when people are grieving or going through something really difficult, or a divorce or losing a job, you feel like you don't know how to reach out. And that's sort of been something that I've talked about a lot on Instagram, is like being there for people that are going through difficult things. No one knows what to say. No one knows what to do. But the thing is just to get past that uncomfortableness and just reach out and say, how are you doing today? And this book lays the really great groundwork for if you've gone through something difficult yourself. I think you would really relate to her and her experience. But it also gave me really great insight into how to get over being uncomfortable about facing, those fears that you have about talking to someone who's gone through a difficult thing, and just getting over that and being a real person and just helping in any way you can. And this gives such great examples of how to do that, and it's such a fabulous book. Totally switching gears. When I took a trip to Charleston for a bachelorette party, I literally read this on the plane there and back in like 2 sittings, and it was great. It's In Her Skin. I literally had never heard anyone talk about this book before, but I was at the bookstore and just the cover and the name took me in. I think it's a young adult book, but listen, it was great. I loved it. It's basically about a family that had a daughter disappear, went missing, and then a different girl who's homeless, who sort of finds her way into, like, 5 years later, after that little girl goes missing, she decides that she's going to become that girl. And it is interesting. It's about deception, keeping a lie, going forward. People, do they find out? Do they not find out? What happens? What happened to the girl to begin with that went missing? It's good. I liked it a lot. Okay, and the other thing is these 2 books by Karen Kepnes. The book You is so interesting. It recently was made into a Lifetime series. It's not at all like a Lifetime type of show. Penn Badgley plays the main character. The main character is the guy. This is the second book, by the way, Hidden Bodies. So I'm sort of in the beginning of listening to that one. But this one, it's basically a guy who's like this dark, creepy guy who works at a bookstore. He's not at all who I pictured him to be, because the guy in the book doesn't have a lot of game. He basically, to get this girl who comes into his bookstore, and he just is obsessed, literally obsessed with her, starts stalking her, starts following her on social media. Her phone goes missing. He takes her phone. She gets a new phone, and he's basically able to see all her texts and emails and everything. And he absolutely tries to do everything he can to work his way into her life, knowing all of the inner workings of her friends and where she's at and all this stuff. It's fascinating. This is a dark, creepy character who will do anything he can to get to Beck, the main girl character, even if that includes murder, which is on the back of the book, so that's not a spoiler. So you want to hate him, but he's so sarcastic, and you almost understand his humor that you kind of like him. Do you want him to get the girl? It's really strange. It plays with your mind because the main character is awful, but you're almost like, yes, it's crazy, and it's so good. To see it played out on TV is amazing, and normally things aren't as good as the book, but I think it's as good, if not better, on TV, because everything that they show is what I pictured in my mind, except for the main character is hotter than I pictured him, because if you need to stalk and murder people to get to a girl, I have a feeling that you're creepy and you're not great looking, because why would you do those things? I don't know. And the person who narrates the book, I did not listen to this one, but I think it's the same narrator of this book. Oh man, the voice is great. I mean, they chose this guy well. That's it for the month. Most successful challenge yet. I mean, I'm not sure because my declutter month was very successful as well, but this was successful in a way that I didn't have to do a lot. That was a lot of work, decluttering. And this month, we're in November. Right now it's November 2nd. And November is my month of kindness. And I'm already into it. I've already been kinding every day. I've been saying that I'm kinding the shit out of November. And it's going to be another good month as well. So that's it. My year of simple is coming to a close. Anyways, that's all. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in another video real soon. Bye.